Hi, my name is Christian French, and I'm going to be going over static stretching in this presentation. So a little bit of overview of static stretching. It's low force and long duration in nature. It takes advantage of autogenic inhibition, which inhibits the muscle spindles by stimulating the GTOs, and it should usually be held for a minimum of 30 seconds per stretch in order to get that effect. Some of the performance benefits include helping to increase range of motion, decrease the risk of injury, and improve soft tissue extensibility. As far as implementation goes, per the NASM's integrated flexibility continuum, you see it falls under that corrective flexibility branch there. So it's a really good starting point for people who are new to flexibility training as kind of a starting progression into more advanced techniques like PNF and dynamic stretching. You want to start them in the corrective flexibility and slowly move through active and functional. And like I said, starting with about 30 seconds per stretch, easy way to implement would be to pick one stretch per muscle group and start with 30 seconds, then progress the duration over time. So that could look like starting with 30 seconds and then going to 45 seconds, a minute, or even adding multiple sets of each stretch. As far as what the research says, there was a study by Wernicke et al. In 2023 comparing stretching versus hypertrophy training in the calf muscles over a 6-week period. And they did an hour a day stretching for 6 weeks every day, so not super practical, but it did lead to greater improvements in maximal voluntary contraction at 180 degrees, so with that straight leg kind of on the left there, versus hypertrophy training. And it also showed improvements in muscle thickness, but not as much as the hypertrophy training. So good study to show you that static stretching can increase bouts of strength, but like I said, not a lot of people are going to have an hour a day to stretch their calves every single day, which is why I like this other study by Warlam et al. This is from this year, and it looked at similar measurements, but it looked at the pectoralis muscle, which is good because a lot of these studies look at the gastroc and lower limbs. So it's good to see an upper extremity muscle examined. So one group did 5 sets of 12 hypertrophy training on a chest fly 3 days per week for 8 weeks, while another group did a stretching routine that lasted 15 minutes a day for 4 days per week over that same 8-week period. And both groups had almost identical increases in isometric maximal strength, which was measured using this butterfly contraption here, and also showed pretty similar increases in muscle thickness. And the static stretching group outperformed the hypertrophy when it came to range of motion, which was used. They used this test on the right, kind of an overhead test, trying to go as far back as you can. So I like this one a little bit better because it's a lot more practical. People are going to be more likely to have 15 minutes a few days a week versus an hour every single day. Some of the main takeaways: the pros: static stretching does, in fact, enhance range of motion, which is good, and it can contribute to strength, as we see in those 2 previous studies. Some of the cons: it's not quite as effective as some other techniques, such as PNF stretching, and it is a little less time efficient. You just can't speed up that process when you're having to take 30 plus seconds for each stretch. You kind of just have to sit there. And then some practical applications: I think it's best used in tandem with strength training. I'd like to see some studies where it compares strength training versus just stretching versus both of them at the same time, because as you see, strength training and stretching can both be effective in increasing strength, range of motion, muscle thickness, all that good stuff. And then you want to avoid it immediately prior to exercise because it has been shown to decrease things like power output, vertical jump height. So depending on what you look at, some studies will say that effect only lasts about 15 minutes. Some of them will say you should wait up to 2 hours plus before you should, between the training and the static stretching. So I think an easy way to do that would just be using it as a cool down after your exercise. Kind of do your static stretching after your resistance training, or doing it sometime like right before you go to bed. It's going to be a while before you do any sort of strength or power training. I think that's a good way to implement it. Here are my references. Thank you for listening, watching. Hope you enjoyed.